I did not get this memo. I am supposed to be lonely. Yeah, I saw this recent report. It was a news report about a study that was conducted, and it appeared in Psychology magazine last month, about how people who are middle-aged, midlife, who live in the United States and are unmarried are lonely. So I thought, what the heck? Why? That doesn't sound like me. If you're midlife and not married, are you lonely? Anytime in my life when I felt lonely, it was probably in my late 30s and early 40s, when I was trying very, very hard to find a partner in life. I was on every dating site in the early 2000s, mid 2000s that you can name of. I ended up starting to call plenty of fish, plenty of pervs, because the creepy people that were on there. Match.com was crap. Even the Christian one, what was that one called? I don't know. There was one that was, I can't remember the name of it, but I tried them all. I paid for them, and I never found anybody of worth on them. And that's when I started feeling mostly lonely, was because I felt rejected. I felt like nobody wanted me. I was sending out these messages to the guys that were on there, and I was usually getting nothing back. I had one guy tell me that I was too fat. I had somebody tell me I was ugly. It was just nasty on there. Or I would get the guy who would, they were obvious, the romance scammers. I had one guy who told me he was a roofer in Georgia, and he was going to move to West Virginia in the middle of winter. And I'm like, dude, you're in the South. How are you going to have a job in West Virginia? And he wanted me to meet his son, and he was ready to move up here. So anyway, not to diatribe into my online dating experience, but I really felt more lonely then, because I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? And then I had the people who I would talk to about it, and I got the platitudes that, oh, it's in God's hands, it's in God's time, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, it'll happen when you stop looking for him, it'll just magically happen someday, you'll meet him at the grocery store when you're looking at the same watermelon or whatever. And I just felt like no one understood what I was going through. I had married friends who told me I was too picky. I had married friends who told me, get out there, then you go to more events. I heard it all. Or your profession is there's too many women in your profession. I heard it all. And I felt so alone at that point, because I felt like no one understood my struggle, and no one did, because from the answers and the replies that I got from people, it was clear that no one quite understood what I was going through. And, you find somebody finds their husband in college when they were 20 and quit school and to become a wife and a mom, telling me I'm too picky. And I'm like, well, I could say the same for you, that you were too desperate, that you just married the first guy that came along, and anyway, that's not what I'm talking about. But I thought it was interesting in the study, and I've been looking through it, and I've been trying to analyze it with that librarian brain that I have, my research librarian brain. They don't talk specifically about why they're saying midlife. It's in the United States. The loneliness peaks in midlife, and not in later, when all the other countries. I think there were 29. Let me double check, but I think there were 29 countries in the study. And okay, so the study was done by Dr. Robin Richardson, an assistant professor at Emory University Rollins School of Public Health. It was Emory University, Columbia University, McGill University in Canada, and Universidad Mayor in Chile. So there were 64,000 people in 29 countries, and they were looking to see where loneliness peaked. And in the majority of the places, it peaked in older people, which is typically what we think of. We think of the elderly and being alone, like left in a nursing home. The family's moved away, their spouse has passed on, and they really have no one, and they're sick, and they're in these homes, or they've been forced out of their home, or they don't have the mobility that they once had. And that's kind of how we always think of it. But for some reason in the United States, it says here in the United States, it peaked in middle age. And unfortunately, there wasn't really a big study about why that happened. But they note the things that they considered factors was poor health, depression, unemployment, and being unmarried. Well, I only fit one of those categories. I'm in relatively good health. I have seasonal affective disorder, but for the most part, I don't have major depression, and I have a job. So the only thing that of the risk factors they named, I was unmarried. So I really started thinking about this, and I'm like, well, am I the anomaly, or is it because I was an only child? I grew up with no one, a very small family, and I had no built-in playmates. I had no big extended family cousins. And so is it maybe more conditioning, or so when you hit midlife, typically if you are married or you have children, you could, do you lose a spouse for divorce, or you lose a spouse from death? Your children go off to college or wherever to start their own lives. And you're kind of in this huge transition of your life. Is that what it is? And a lot of people talk about losing their job in midlife, because younger people come along, or they want to hire younger people because they don't have to pay them as much. If you're seasoned and experienced and you have a lot of experience, then they don't want to pay you what you're worth. So there's a lot of things going on in this study that I thought opened more questions than it had answers. Because if you just look at it and say, oh, well, yeah, according to this study, I should be very lonely, and I'm not. Once I worked through the whole rejection and part of online dating, and just kind of like, as a good Gen Xer said, F it. I just, I don't feel that way. And I've made some really good friends over the years in all of the jobs that I've had, that I still talk to, even though I don't live where I used to live, or they don't live where they used to live. We still talk, we still communicate. You have Facebook, you have social media, you have everything. So I don't see how, I don't understand. I can understand the unemployment. You don't have a place to go every day. You don't have, you can feel disconnected. Because I know when we were in the COVID time, when we had the COVID times, sounds like some like some, remember the COVID times. But back when we were all on our the shutdown, and it was not, it got to the point where it wasn't fun, because I didn't get to see my colleagues at work every day. I didn't get to talk. We share the stuff that we shared. So I could understand, if you're unemployed, why that would contribute to your loneliness, because you don't have that camaraderie, that whatever the social structure that you would have with a job. But I still don't see why being unmarried would be a major risk factor. They called it a risk factor. And I don't know why that would be risky, because I don't have a partner. I don't have a spouse. And, I live alone, but, I also have my dog. I have my job that I really like. I have friends. So it's not like I'm living in a vacuum somewhere that like we did when we were in COVID. I can see if we had done this study 5 years ago, people saying that. And I'm sure the people who were unmarried and or didn't have a family, didn't have people that they could see on a daily basis, probably did suffer a lot more during the shutdown because they didn't have that daily or frequent communications. I mean, we couldn't even go out and the store and, groceries, and you had to distance yourself from people. And it was that I can understand 5 years ago had this study been done. So I don't know. I didn't look into that when the study was done, because if it was done several years ago when people were still working from home, still not being able to see each other, that could contribute to it. But yeah, I'm confused why it would peak in midlife in the United States, but not anywhere else. Well, it said there was one other country, I think, was it England or somewhere else it did do it. So why are we so different that it peaks for us in midlife in the US, but not anywhere else? And it goes against, what we expect. And the only thing I can think of is that it is that whole idea that you have so many life changes in midlife. If you had gone that traditional route of getting married and having kids, so then when you hit your 40s, 50s, and your kids are moving out, and a lot of times, people grow apart. You were a couple and you stay together because of the kids maybe, and then as soon as they're gone, you kind of go separate ways, or the downsizing and stuff like that. I can understand it, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And like I said, I don't feel lonely. I don't know why that is. It's weird. Because I was, when I was a kid, I felt lonely a lot because I didn't have a sibling. I didn't have a partner in crime, like somebody to goof off with, and always have somebody there, built-in playmates. And that was rough when I was a kid. So I don't know if it's just something that I experienced at such an early age that I worked through it. Unconsciously, I worked through it, and I know how to handle it. I know how to handle being alone at night with my own thoughts. I know how to handle being alone. And, there are days like when I have a day off, there are days I don't even want to go out because I love having that time to myself. I'm also an introvert. So, and having an extrovert type of job where I'm out publicly and I have to be on for 8 hours a day, having a day that I don't have to be on for anyone is phenomenal for me. And I recharge. So I get my crochet, or I get my, turn on something, Hulu or something, and watch some TV and get to that point where I'm just like, I've had enough people. I'm not peopling today. I want a cat today. I want to just sit in the window and enjoy the sun and do whatever I want to do and not worry about people, because I have those moments. So I don't know, maybe I am the anomaly. So if you're midlife and not married or have bad health, are you depression? Are you lonely? I mean, I can understand the depression one, because depression is a brutal, brutal thing. And I have several friends and several people in my life who have it. And I understand I don't understand it, but I can empathize with it. And I know that it is such a hard thing to deal with. And, my heart, I go out to you. I send you all my love if you are suffering from depression, because it is not, I know it's not easy, and it's horrendous. So, that one I understand if you had that. And I understand if you have bad health, you could feel lonely because, like I know when my mom was sick, it seemed like it was just nonstop doctors and nonstop procedures and blood work, and just every week we were going somewhere, and even though you're out and you're seeing people, nurses and doctors and lab techs and waiting room people, it still is, it can be rough because nobody, unless you've been through it too, you don't feel like people understand that, unless you've been through it or you've had a family member go through it. So I can understand that. And again, I said I can understand the unemployment aspect, but the unmarried one, I don't get. Not like the study is trying to perpetuate the myth that the lonely old cat lady, it's not the lonely middle-aged cat lady, it's only in the United States. So it's that's the strange thing, that it's only in one other country. It's only in 2 countries. So is that something that's in our society that has recently brought this to happen? So those are my thoughts right now. I don't know. I didn't answer anything, but I do know that I felt, like I said, I felt much more alone and much more like people didn't understand my struggles when I was younger than I do now, because now I don't really care. So drop a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.